Welcome back. We're here with Matt from Kombuchade, which was established in 2015. Matt, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm excited. It's another day to talk about gut health, right? I think
Yes,
it for me became this. It became my purpose in life, right? Once I
yes.
discovered it, it was like, whoa, like this is something I could dedicate 10 years or 20 years of my life to learning how to be an educator and provide products
hmm
for people curious about that space.
Yes. And so, with it almost being around for 10 years, which is super exciting for you guys, why get into the kombucha business?
Man, uh, I always, with this question, try to think about like how far back do I go?
Yeah.
The quick answer was I was working in food plants as an engineer, right? So I had an ability to generate income and revenue through a skill set that was related to the manufacturing of these products. And then secondarily, I had a passion in rugby, right? And through rugby, like how can I be bigger, stronger, faster, smarter? As I started elevating through the levels of play, you notice that physical size, physical speed start to even out.
Yeah.
And then there's this intangible thing. It's like, what is it? How do I get that? And, it's through different types of either breathing exercises or mental strength training or mental fitness types of ideas. And then I came to learn about gut health and how it also was connected to my mental health. It was connected to my growth hormones. It was connected to my pregame poops just for feeling light for the tournaments. And nobody was talking about it. I had never heard it. I have teammates who have gone on to become Olympians. They had never heard of it.
Wow.
And so it, for me, became this perfect positioning, right? Almost like this divine intervention of mixture of my passions, my purpose, and my ability to generate revenue.
Yes, that's exciting. And the fact that you looked at everything and you said, okay, how can I give myself an advantage while also being healthy? Because there's advantages you can get taking steroids, things that aren't the
Right.
healthiest things to do. And what was that moment that, that really sparked in your mind that you said, I want to make a product that can help people and just to help them be healthy in general?
Yeah. So I was always fascinated with personal transformations and observing transformations in people in the community or especially on my team, right? Because I loved recruiting for my rugby teams when I was in high school and in college and finding these guys that would go from zero to like, oh my God, like I want that guy on my team.
Yeah.
And these transformations happen relatively fast, right? 6 months, 12 months. Sometimes you meet somebody, you know them for 48 months, 5 years, 6 years, and you see these amazing transformations. And so I was always fascinated with how to accelerate those or experimenting with them for myself. And then as people observed that I was having benefits from them, sharing
Yeah.
what I was doing or how I was doing it. Um, so I always just love that part of it. And I think, when you see like Butterfingers made or you see like microwave bacon being made or you really see viscerally this ultra processed food
Yes.
being produced, being packaged, being distributed, being consumed, there's this sense of like apathy or like cynicism that at least started to develop inside of me. And I really started to resent the fact that I was like at least playing a pretty intimate cog in this wheel. Um, and so I almost like took it as a call to adventure that like, if I fail, I'm sure they're always going to need somebody like me again at one of these big companies.
Yeah.
But I just really felt like, I have a deep connection to nature also. And I think I just felt this responsibility to think about new ways to make food that was good for people, good for profits, and good for the planet. And I saw things like Whole Foods, and I saw I wasn't the only one thinking this
Yeah.
by any means, right? But I think what I saw was a unique opportunity to be the probiotic gut health, mental health kombucha guy for rugby and then ultimately be that bridge into other sports and other active communities.
Yes. And can you talk about the difference between your kombucha versus someone making it themselves at home?
For sure. So I started making it at home. Right, I was making it in my mom's kitchen when I first started, and I feel like as a material science engineer, that's what I was trained at in the university at the University of Illinois. And it's essentially the study of, right, like think about a big periodic table of elements being on the wall. There was probably one in your science class
Yeah.
growing up, or
Yeah.
I was always like, what the fuck is that? But it made sense when for us, they like, this is it. This is the material world. And we go to certain places on earth and we harvest these materials. Here's how we harvest them. Then we process them into raw materials. Then we take those raw materials and we turn them into products. We package them and they get distributed. And so our whole element of training was breaking down everything from this is a product being distributed all the way back to the periodic table of elements. And so when I thought about kombucha, I didn't think about like, oh, I love GT's kombucha, which is what I loved, ginger blueberry.
Okay.
I have some in my fridge now. Like instead of buying a soda, that's what I buy. And that's what I was doing. I was drinking water, protein shakes, and that was it. And it was like, dude, okay, I need something else. Kombucha, it's like a healthy soda. Um, but when I looked at it through the lens of a rugby player and through the lens of like a contact sport athlete. So I wasn't looking for a soda replacement. I was looking for something that was going to replace these like power caffeine goos. I wanted to replace these like electrolyte tabs that we would drop in the water bottles and drink that. I was looking to replace like some guys actually drink Coca Cola, gives you a little bit of caffeine,
Yeah.
gives you a little bit of quick sugar. I was looking to replace Gatorades, Powerades, and like traditional kind of sports drinks. And so that was the lens that I looked at it through. So the texture, right, is like it's not super carbonated. It's not sugar free, right? It does have some carbohydrate content. We want some electrolyte contents in there. And then we have a whole playbook of functional herbs and teas that I didn't see kombucha playing off of, right? They were making big batches of green tea kombucha. Let's put some fresh pressed organic juice in there and carbonate it to make a healthy soda.
Hmm.
But I was like, dude, I want maximum nutrients. I want functional herbs. I want real elements and minerals, right? Coming from a great source. I want a little bit of sparkle, but I don't want like a carbonation where I can't just crack that can and drink half of it because I
Yeah.
just like I'm going to play another rugby game in like an hour.
Yeah.
Um, so that was kind of the whole thought process was breaking all those elements down. So then it became water, tea, sugar, and then what am I packaging it in?
Yeah.
So in each of those columns, I started looking for the closest slash highest quality supplier that I could find.
And
So go
that's
ahead.
the traditional like method, right? Like of like making kombucha versus I saw on your website you also talk about how there's like other ways to make kombucha. Why decide to go like the traditional like method?
So this is a great question. Uh, when you look at how kombucha is made, there's two primary ways that it's made. Traditionally, it was made as a continuous brew, which the analogy you can think of is like a sourdough.
Okay.
So you take a chunk of that and you save it for the next batch, and then you're continuously making bread from this little chunk that just continues to live on. Um, when you make a batch brew of kombucha, which is still like people have done this for a long time. Like don't confuse like traditional with old.
Hmm.
Traditional was like this is how families would do it. Like your great aunt would make it and leave it
Yeah.
on the counter. Um, but the other kombuchas are made saving a SCOBY and a little bit of kombucha, so you're still reusing some of the starter culture, but then they'll make a batch. So here's a little bit of starter, make a big batch, and then you save a little bit, save a SCOBY, and then you'll kickstart another batch another time. You're not sure when. But what I noticed was in the continuous brew, you get some higher concentrations of some of these, like beneficial properties, whether they're vitamins, organic acids, or probiotics. You also get a more nuanced flavor, right? Like you're continuously brewing this thing versus
Yeah.
like, I'm going to make a batch and then flavor it. I also think you get some consistency, right? Week in, week out. Think of like a 5 gallon pickle jar. We're removing 50% of that solution every 7 days and then pumping in a fresh solution, stirring it up and letting it go another 7 days. So there's this continuous cycle of energy and nutrients that's happening. And then I can also build in these functional herbs over time. So we're actually fermenting these herbs and teas. We're not just making a green tea batch and then flavoring it. It's
Okay.
like there's yerba mate, there's rooibos, there's ginger, there's all these functional herbs and teas that are themselves going through the fermentation process itself too. Um, but I found that to be like, again, from a process standpoint, it's scalable. It's brewed in glass still,
Yeah.
which I think is an ideal material. Um, and it allows us to mix flavor and function, right? So we can build in this at this intersection of flavor and function. And then outside of that, you've got batch brew, continuous brew. There's a third version that we've seen that's gaining a lot of popularity, which is brewing kombucha from concentrate. And it's a mixture of this batch brewing process, but instead of fermenting that entire batch for say like 10 days or 20 days or however long a 500 or 1,000 gallon batch takes, um, they'll ferment it for like a few hours and then cut it with vinegar and just pour vinegar made from kombucha, but it was a kombucha that was fermented until it was in vinegar, and then they just pour the vinegar in so they can bypass this like true fermentation or
Okay.
natural fermentation process. So I'm even confused, like, and I'm in the industry. I can't imagine what your listeners are thinking right
Yeah.
now or what the general public is thinking from an outside perspective of what is kombucha? What's going on with kombucha? Why is this one different than the other one? And I always just bring up this analogy of craft beer, and we're going to see that same creative evolution that we saw in craft beer in the non-alcoholic space and specifically in the kombucha space also.
Yeah. I think there's a lot that goes into it. And I think a lot, what you also talked about on your website, how there's many different things that other people use that you don't use. And I think there's going to be a lot of knowledge and a lot of learning when it comes to this industry. And you also talked about the terrible ingredients that are in our food, the toxic ingredients. Why do you think in America these are allowed versus being banned in Europe?
Yeah, it's like there's a lot of parts there. I think when I set out to make a kombucha, I wanted something that I could, in good conscience, hand to children or hand to my mom.
Hmm.
And I wanted to build a brand on that because I knew that would eventually be a currency. That authenticity and transparency in how this wild like living product is being made is going to be really necessary. Um, so we set out to make sure that it was clean, local, fair trade, sustainable, whatever we could do to the best of our ability in that sense. We set out to do that so that we could be a part of the solution, right? To your question of like,
Yes.
how is it possible that these things are going on? And I think it's kind of a blessing and a curse of this country, right? We're set up based on this premise of don't tax our tea and tell us what to do, right? So to the very nature of our character as a country, as Americans, and I'm only second generation American, right? This is still new for me and my family, but like the essence of it was don't tax our tea and don't tell us what to do. So I think in some regards The blessing though is there's an ability for people like me to see an opportunity and find a way to pursue passions and profits in a way that's authentic and genuine to what the people really want.
Yeah.
And so while we might see news articles of like Russia bans glyphosate use or Europe doesn't allow bromate in their bread, and it's like Americans are so stupid, and it's like, it's great, but like go try and start a business like Kombuchade in Russia or in the UK or in some of these other countries where your rights come from a government instead of your rights coming from God.
Yeah.
And I think it's a double-edged sword because I wish
Yes.
we could just say like, hey dude, no more glyphosate in on our crops and in our water supply. Imagine what kind of productivity gains we might see as a country if we didn't have 60% of the adults with gut health issues.
Yes. No, I
What does that
agree.
what does that look like when we start talking about chronic inflammation and the
Yes.
productivity loss of metabolic health diseases related to chronic inflammation? And this was the kind of stuff that I started learning that I was like, fuck everything. And then I was like, dude, actually, what I could do is make a probiotic Gatorade and
Yeah.
potentially help a lot of people and make millions of dollars someday.
Yes. And I think it's, I mean, just like you said, it's that fine line, right? Between, do you ban stuff like Red 40 that we know isn't good for us, or do we give people the free will to choose? But then there's that middle ground of like, well, if people aren't self aware, then they don't have the capacity to, look at these things. They're just going on what school told them to eat or what what the table. So it's that really fine line between giving people the option to do whatever they want versus banning things that we know are not good for us. And to kind of go a little personal, you spent 10 days in Africa. How did that change your perspective on American society?
Oh man, travel does that. Um, I've been blessed to have traveled the world with several different rugby teams. When I went to Africa through rugby, my one of my best teammates and the best man in my wedding was from South Africa. His family produced wildlife documentaries for Japanese television all throughout his life. So he grew up pretty much out in the bush on these production shoots. And um, we basically took two Land Rovers and went tent camping in the Okavango Delta, which is one of the highest densities of animal wildlife kind of transitions where for the wet and the dry season, they all go to this one area. And I can't even really put it into words what it's like to just be out in the wild. And I think, again, it's one of these things that as humans, we, through our egos, like see ourselves as separate from the wild.
Yes.
Um, but when you really get out there, you realize that you're just a single part of this whole organism, however you conceive of this thing. Um, and not having access to cell phones for 10 days, just a journal and my camera, some really good friends, my at the time fiance, now my wife, um, getting up close and personal to some of the world's just most beautiful and dangerous animals is just an unbelievable experience. And, we did this like through, again, some unfair advantages that I have. This friend of mine who happens to be an expert, and his dad is a mix of like a Green Beret and David Attenborough. And I think for me, what it proved to me is this connection to the wild is super important in a way that's beyond words. But also that who you surround yourself with and the kind of people that you're attracting into your life or want to attract in your life is also incredibly important, and something that it's easy to get stuck in like the hustle, or it's
Yeah.
easy to get stuck in to-do list mentalities. I'm guilty of it all the time. But really learning, how to be present in the moment with people that you're kind of consciously surrounding yourself with. Um, it doesn't get much better than that. I mean, I really think for me, that was also part of this pursuit with Kombuchade is I have a lot more control now over the people that I spend time with in my life and the things that we spend our time doing. I still have to wipe my butt and take out the
Yeah.
trash, right? Like there's always that. And we're by no means as far along as I wish we were. There's still a lot of room for growth, but if I lost everything, like I would never regret taking that trip or answering that call to adventure
Yeah.
when I was given that opportunity.
And I like how because I'm huge into nature as well. So it's really cool. You went out there, you put the phone away, you put all the technology away. You said, let's go, let's be present, let's surround myself with people I like, and let's get this experience. And as an entrepreneur, what is one lesson you wish to instill into your kid?
Ooh, into my kids. Start your email list as soon as possible. I'm joking, but that's the advice I would have given myself about 10 years ago. Um, Something I want to show my kid is we were kind of raised with like not the healthiest perspective of money. I think in my household, right, my dad being a first generation immigrant from Ireland, my mom's second generation from like Germany, Austria, and a mix of Ireland. We were just very tied to this like hard work equals pay. And the only way to scale that was like more hard work and more hours. And it's only something that I've recently started really breaking as far as my mental limits go of thinking outside of that box and really valuing my skill set as a visionary and a communicator. Um, so I think that's what I would try most to instill in my kid is like, but again, hard work is really powerful,
Yeah.
right? So I think there's a good mix of learning how to work hard, but also learning how to have a vision, be able to communicate that vision, and then work hard.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are, especially in America, are grown up in that work, make money, retire, die. And it's just like that cycle of you have to work hard, you have to work hard. Like you said, it is a part of the equation, but I feel like a lot of people end there. They're like, work hard, and that's it. Like that's the only thing they kind of give to you is like, okay, now what do I've worked hard for 20 years. I'm not where I want to be. What else do I do? And I think a lot of people don't know. Like they don't have a vision. They don't have like huge goals they want to obtain. And how do you stay hopeful when life gets dark?
Man, you gotta have a plan, dude. It's like I could be in the deepest, darkest hole of my life, but if I have a shovel and a plan, and I'll just start shoveling.
Yeah,
I think if you're in a hole right now and you're like really not sure what to do, ask for help also, right? Like some people are willing to go down in that hole with you and swing a shovel or give you a break if you need it so you can get back to it. But I think the biggest challenge with hope when you're in a hole is just not having a plan. Um, I think for me, it's that's also part of that vision, right? Like, where do you want to go? Because if you're in the hole and you're trying to go up, but you're digging this way, like, where are you trying to go? Have you thought about it? Have you stopped swinging the shovel to see, like, am I digging a hole to plant a tree? And then I need to get out of here, or am I just digging to dig because
yeah,
I was told I needed to work hard? Um, but yeah, I think having a plan to just sitting down. The hardest thing that anyone ever has to do, especially if your struggle is learning how to not work, is sitting down in stillness and
yeah,
making a plan and just thinking. I know I'm definitely on the side of like sloth is not really my challenge. My challenge is making sure that I'm focused, making sure that I'm resting, making sure that I'm communicating where I want this vision to go. Um, so yeah, I think just make a plan, dude. Dig yourself
yes,
out.
absolutely. I've Two more questions.
Hmm.
If you could have dinner with two people, one person from the past and one person from the present, who would it be and why?
I like this one. I'm gonna cheat a little. I just made a list of like if I could have a board of advisors and whether they were living or dead, and I ended up with close to 27 names.
Wow. That's awesome.
So I'm gonna pull up this list and see if there's any of them that jump out to me the most. If I can only pick two,
Yes.
man, because I feel like the majority of these were either spiritual leaders, authors, great warriors, or great like inventors or entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
If I could only pick two, I think I would pick Dale Carnegie and Jesus Christ.
Okay. What about present?
Ooh, present. I'd like to see Elon Musk and Tim Kennedy
Okay.
together.
Why? Why? We'll start with the past. Why? Let's go with Dale Carnegie. Why Dale Carnegie? That's a new one for the show. We haven't had that one yet.
Man, I feel like Carnegie also gets a bad rap sometimes about like how his foundation turned out and like some of the campaigns they're pushing or how much power they have. It's like a really unchecked power. I'm really curious what he would think of that.
Yeah.
Like, because I really wonder when he initially set it up, like how his mindset was and his intentions, and then what happened like 4 generations later. I'd just really love to hear him respond to that. And I think the same with JC. Like, you know, hey dude,
Yes.
like what do you think of the current status of Christianity as a spiritual like practice? Um, do you have beef with these other religions or like because I'm of the opinion like we're kind of all trying to talk about the same thing. We just use
Yes.
different words and different practices. And I'd be curious to hear like his state of the union.
And what were your two for the present?
Yeah,
Elon
living would
Musk.
be Elon Musk and Tim Kennedy.
Okay.
Um,
Why Tim Kennedy?
they both have very like it's a dichotomy, right? Like Elon Musk is kind of this like nerdy, like fringe inventor, entrepreneur, futurist. And Tim Kennedy is this like mixed martial arts, green beret author, but also very like I think patriotic isn't the right word. It's like very visionary in terms of community building. And I'm super interested at that intersection of those two, right? Like, how do we create great citizens, great warriors, great entrepreneurs, just like genuinely really self sustaining people, like really just empowered people? But how do we also embrace like futurism?
Yeah.
And how do we engineer systems that are in balance with the earth and embracing modernity? And I'd love to kind of just get those two clashes of like I want to be a farmer and raise great kids and shoot, move, communicate, medicate, have my whole community understand how to do that versus Elon Musk, which is like, we need to go to Mars and we need to like there's I'm definitely at like the complete middle ground between those two. So I think that's why it would be most interesting for me.
Yes. Yes. One more question.
Mhm.
Why did you decide to partner with us and offer the discounts?
Dude, I just want to get liquid to lips. I want as many people to understand that for me, this felt like a red pill moment in the movie The Matrix of like understanding gut health and what it can do for somebody and what it will do for millions of people as they start to understand it. And so my mission's twofold, right? It's promote a lifestyle of like, this is something that's going to genuinely add a huge impact to your life for a relatively low cost. and then provide a product that's a great entryway. That's delicious. That's made by somebody who cares. The ingredients are all clean and intentionally sourced. Um, so I think it's an easy choice, right? Like any community that's interested in the things that we talked about on today's podcast, we're looking to align ourselves with and be a part of this new age of culture, right? I think. Have you ever heard of this concept of the? It's called the cultural creatives.
No, no, I have not.
So this philosophy is super interesting. I highly recommend you look it up. I think you're probably a part of this group, and so are a lot of your followers. Um, but uh, speaking about like culture, there's traditionally been just traditional culture and modern culture. And what we're starting to see, and again, this is a great transition of this juxtaposition between Elon Musk and Tim Kennedy, is
Yeah,
like there's a new culture that has already been birthed that hasn't received its due credit from mainstream. We're already here. We're already thinking this way. We're already purchasing in this way. We're already behaving in this way. But modern culture and traditional culture are still only seeing this dichotomy where the cultural creatives are this blend of modernism and traditionalism, and we value things differently, and we purchase things differently, and we think about things differently. And um like I'm just kind of on this mission to like shout from the rooftops of like, hey, the cultural creatives are here. I'm definitely one of them. I'm looking for other groups and other people that have similar values to me. By the way, I've made this really cool product to contribute to the community. um, this is who I am. This is what I want to work on. I want to find other people that want to do the same things. And it's just pretty much rooted in empowerment and
yeah,
sustainability and balance with the world. So it's kind of cool to talk to you guys and get my story out there, because I'm very much like just living in my own world sometimes, and I forget that there's other people that
yeah,
haven't heard about these things yet, you know.
yeah. No, dude, I love that. And I didn't realize I knew we were aligned, but I didn't realize we were this aligned. And it's always so fulfilling when I have people on and I get to dive deeper into who they are as a human and realize, like, damn, like we're here to ride together. Like we're here to succeed together. We're here to make this shit happen. And that's all the questions I have. But dude, it was a great conversation. Like I love chatting with you. This was awesome. How can people find you to check out your product and what you're doing? And what is one thing you want to leave them with?
I think I want to leave them with just this image of the red pill and the blue pill. No one's coming to save you. We live in a world of ultra processed foods made by people who don't care about you, and taking care of your gut health is pretty low cost. It's pretty easy access, and it can be the number one thing that you can do to preserve and protect your own life, but also the lives of your families. And I know that sounds dramatic in a sense, but when you really start piecing together some of these dots of like pesticides in the food and the water, pharmaceuticals, and other things being in our environment, some of the toxins from cleaning supplies and other things like that, you really start understanding that we are kind of in this bacterial warfare right now. And this is kind of how I framed it for myself, was how can I be a warrior in that environment, and how can I support and preserve and protect the life of others. All our stuff's super easy to find. Kombuchade on Instagram, kombuchade.com. I have a personal page on Instagram at Matt Lancor. I have a website at mattlancor.com. We interview on my podcast people kind of at that intersection of sports and entrepreneurship. And we sell our products online. We just launched a new website this week. The coupon
Congrats.
codes are live, and we're essentially looking for people that just want a crisp, delicious, refreshing probiotic drink 1 to 3 times a week for the rest of your life if you end up building that trust with us and joining our community. And we'll have a lot of other things coming down the line in terms of how to empower this community even more.
I love it, Matt. Well, dude, I'm here to support any way I can. Thank you so much for coming on, and it was a great conversation. Learned a lot, and it was just really good to get to know you more. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
For sure. I appreciate you checking in and giving me a platform to just talk about our probiotic power up.
Of course. Awesome. Well, thanks, Matt. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Easton.